Once upon a time, in a peaceful part of Lagos City, there lived two married couples. The area was quite far from the noise of the main city. These couples lived in small rented rooms, and their doors were directly opposite each other. Every morning, as the sun began to rise, the two wives, Cynthia and Anita, would open their doors and greet each other with warm smiles. Their homes were so close that they didn't even have to step outside to see one another. Cynthia and Anita were the best of friends. Their friendship had blossomed long before they got married, and now they found themselves living as neighbors. It seemed like destiny had a hand in bringing them together. Anita was the first to give birth, a beautiful baby girl who brought immense joy into her home. The little one was cherished by both parents and quickly became the center of their world. As the years went by, Anita welcomed 3 more children into their family, each one bringing more happiness and laughter. Their days were filled with the sounds of little giggles and the chaos of a growing, loving family. Meanwhile, Cynthia watched with a mix of joy and longing. She was truly happy for her friend, but she couldn't help but feel a little sadness. While Anita was being blessed with children, Cynthia remained childless. She had always dreamed of being a mother, but so far, that dream hadn't come true. The happiness in Anita's life was a constant reminder of what Cynthia deeply desired. As time passed, the close friendship between Cynthia and Anita began to change. The two, who once spent hours together sharing stories and dreams, now found themselves drifting apart. Anita was often preoccupied, juggling the demands of motherhood and managing a growing household. She had little time to spend with her friend, and Cynthia felt the distance between them. Over time, Cynthia found herself struggling with feelings of jealousy. It was hard for her to watch Anita's life, full of children and joy, while she remained childless. Each time she heard the laughter of Anita's children from across the way, it deepened the ache in her heart. At first, she tried to push her feelings aside. She knew she should be happy for Anita, but the bitterness inside her grew every day. Anita, on the other hand, began to sense the change in their friendship. She noticed how Cynthia no longer stopped by like she used to, and whenever they saw each other, there was an uncomfortable silence between them. One afternoon, as Anita rocked her youngest child to sleep, she thought to herself, "It's like Cynthia is keeping her distance from me. But why?" One day, as Cynthia was sweeping the front of her home, she noticed Anita's husband, Papa Shima, walking down the path carrying a beautifully wrapped bundle in his arms. Curious, she watched as he approached Anita's door and handed it to her. Anita received it with joy, unwrapping the gift to reveal a gorgeous wrapper with vibrant colors, the kind she had always admired. Cynthia's heart sank as she saw the happiness on her friend's face. "Why couldn't my husband do something like that for me?" she thought, bitterness creeping into her heart. That evening, when Cynthia's husband, Adema, returned home from his workshop, she couldn't hold back her frustration any longer. As he walked in, she confronted him, her voice tinged with resentment. "Why can't you buy me gifts like Papa Shima buys for Anita? Look at how he makes her feel special." Adema, exhausted from a long day of work, sighed and looked away. "Why are you disturbing me, Cynthia?" "You know I'm doing my best," he replied, his voice flat. "Besides, you haven't given me any children. Do you expect me to buy you gifts like Papa Shima does for Anita?" Cynthia felt her cheeks flush with anger and hurt. "That's not fair, Adema," she snapped. "Just because I haven't had children doesn't mean I don't deserve to be treated with love." Adema shook his head, frustration evident in his tone. "Listen, Cynthia. People are calling him Papa Shima now, forgetting his actual name. But what do they call me? They call me Adima, the man with no children. Do you think I want to hear that? I don't need any more reminders of what we don't have. So please, let me be, and go make my food." Cynthia's heart ached at his words. It was painful to hear him speak so bluntly about their situation. She felt alone, frustrated, and now, even smaller in her own home. One day, as Anita was washing clothes, the sun shone brightly in the sky, and she felt a sense of satisfaction as she scrubbed away the dirt. After finishing, she spread the clothes outside to dry, enjoying the fresh air as they fluttered in the breeze. Later that day, she took her children to the clinic for their vaccinations. However, as she arrived, dark clouds began to gather overhead. She hurried through the appointment, hoping the rain would hold off until she returned home. Unfortunately, by the time she left the clinic, the sky had opened up, and heavy rain poured down. Anita rushed home, but it was too late. The rain had soaked her husband's clothes and her children's outfits that she had left outside. Feeling frustrated, Anita remembered that she had asked Cynthia to help her bring in the clothes if it started to rain. Cynthia was supposed to be there for me, she thought. When Anita finally got home and saw the wet clothes still hanging outside, her anger boiled over. Without thinking twice, she marched over to Cynthia's house and knocked firmly on the door. When Cynthia opened it, her expression was a mix of surprise and confusion. "I asked you to help me," Anita exclaimed, unable to hide her frustration. "I told you to bring in the clothes if it started to rain, but you didn't do anything." Cynthia crossed her arms, a defensive look on her face. "Is it my fault that it rained? Did I tell you to leave your clothes outside?" she snapped. Anita felt a wave of hurt. It was as if her friend was dismissing her concern entirely. "She used to be my friend. I thought she would help me when I needed it," Anita thought, her voice rising. But Cynthia's expression remained cold. "Am I responsible for your decisions? If you wanted to keep your clothes safe, you should have thought ahead." A heavy silence hung between them. Cynthia's heart sank as she realized just how much their friendship had changed. The bond that once connected them felt frayed and broken. Years passed, and the silence between Cynthia and Anita deepened. Though they continued living as neighbors, they kept their distance. Their husbands exchanged small talk whenever they crossed paths, but their conversations were always superficial, lacking the warmth and depth that true friendship brings. Anita now had 5 children, each one a blessing. The compound was filled with laughter as they played games, running around with joy. Even on the most stressful days, the sight of her children playing brought a smile to Anita's face. Meanwhile, Cynthia watched from her home, torn between happiness for Anita and the familiar ache of jealousy. The sight of the children playing brought back memories of the life she had once dreamed of, a life filled with the laughter of her own children. It was bittersweet to witness the joy Anita experienced every day. As time went on, Anita remained a diligent mother, always reminding her children to bring their slippers inside at night. However, the children, being young and carefree, often forgot. One morning, Anita noticed 2 pairs of slippers lying outside. "Oh, not again," she sighed, shaking her head in frustration. She called her children over, her tone firm. "Come here, all of you," she said, arms crossed. The children shuffled together, knowing they were about to get scolded. "How many times have I told you to bring your slippers inside at night?" Anita asked, looking each child in the eye. The children looked down, guilty expressions on their faces. "But Mama, we were just playing, and we forgot," her eldest son mumbled in defense. Anita sighed, frustration evident in her voice. Playing is not an excuse. I have warned you countless times, and it's important that you listen to me. You are old enough to remember your things." The children exchanged guilty glances before mumbling in unison, "We're sorry, Mama." Seeing their sincerity, Anita softened slightly. "I know you're just kids, but I need you to try harder. If you forget your slippers outside again, there will be consequences. Now go get ready for the day, and remember to keep your things safe." Meanwhile, Cynthia sat in a quiet corner of her favorite restaurant, a bottle of drink in her hands, feeling the weight of her worries pressing heavily on her shoulders. She was meeting her close friend Ukiya, who had always been a supportive listener. As they chatted about life, Cynthia couldn't help but pour out her feelings of frustration and despair. "I'm almost 40, Ukiya," Cynthia said, her voice tinged with sadness. "I thought by now I would have children of my own. I see Anita with 5 kids, and it just hurts. What's wrong with me?" Ukiya, who was also in a similar situation, nodded understandingly. "I know how you feel, Cynthia. I've been there too. But you shouldn't lose hope. There are always ways to address this." Cynthia's eyes narrowed in curiosity. "What do you mean?" Ukiya leaned in closer, her voice low, as if she were sharing a secret. "I know a native doctor who has helped many women in our community who struggle to conceive. He can find the source of barrenness and give you a charm to help with it. It worked for others. It could work for you too." Cynthia raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet skeptical. "A native doctor? Do you really think that could help? I've tried so many doctors and treatments, and nothing has worked so far." "I know it sounds unconventional," Ukiya admitted, "but sometimes we need to explore other options. This native doctor is very respected, and many women have returned with good news after visiting him. If you're open to it, I can go with you." Cynthia considered this for a moment. The idea felt strange, but she was desperate for a solution. After years of feeling broken and alone, she was willing to try anything that might help her become a mother. "All right," she said, a mix of hope and anxiety in her voice. "When can we go?" Ukiya smiled, sensing Cynthia's willingness. "Let's plan for this weekend. I'll arrange everything. You'll see. It might be just what you need." The visit to the native doctor. The weekend arrived, and Cynthia felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety as she and Ukiya made their way to the native doctor's shrine. The air was thick with anticipation as they approached the small, mysterious structure, surrounded by towering trees. Cynthia's heart pounded as they entered, the dim light from oil lamps casting eerie shadows on the walls, adorned with various charms and symbols. An elderly man with deep-set eyes and a wise demeanor welcomed them with a nod. After exchanging pleasantries, he motioned for Cynthia to sit before him. She felt a sense of reverence in his presence, but also a growing apprehension about what he might reveal. "Tell me why you are here," he said, his voice calm yet commanding. Cynthia took a deep breath and shared her story, her longing for children, her years of disappointment, and the jealousy she had felt toward Anita and her family. The native doctor listened intently, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he leaned closer. "Your barrenness," he said slowly, "is not just a medical condition. It stems from a powerful exchange." Cynthia's heart sank as she awaited his next words. "It is because of a former friend, Anita. She has taken your womb in exchange for hers. This is why you have no children of your own." His words hit Cynthia like a blow, stirring a storm of emotions within her. "What do you mean?" Cynthia stammered, struggling to process the revelation. How could she do that? The native doctor remained unfazed. "Anita's ability to bear children is the result of this exchange. To reclaim what is rightfully yours, you must act. I have a charm that will help you." He reached behind him and produced a small green bottle filled with a shimmering liquid, handing it to Cynthia. His eyes bore into hers. "At midnight, pour the contents of this bottle onto Anita's children's slippers. When they wear them, they will fall ill and die. This will open your womb for childbirth." Cynthia's heart pounded as she stared at the bottle in her hands, trembling. It was a heavy price to pay, not just in gold, which she had already given in exchange for the charm, but morally. "Is there no other way?" she whispered, barely able to speak. The native doctor shook his head. "This is the only path to reclaim what is yours. You must decide." Conflicted but desperate, Cynthia took the bottle, feeling the weight of her choice pressing down on her. She had spent so long wishing for a child that the idea of taking such drastic measures began to feel less foreign, more justifiable. The anger and jealousy she felt toward Anita clouded her judgment, and a dark resolve settled in her heart. The dark deed. That evening unfolded like any other in the compound. Anita's children played outside, their laughter echoing in the cool evening breeze. They ran around, completely absorbed in their games. As darkness fell, the tired children ran inside, leaving their slippers scattered across the yard, as they often did. Cynthia, who had been watching from her window, waited patiently until the compound was silent. The weight of the green bottle in her hands felt unbearable. She had spent the entire day thinking about what she was about to do. The native doctor's words echoed in her mind. "This is the only way." She kept repeating it to herself, trying to silence the small voice in her head that whispered doubts. As the clock neared midnight, Cynthia quietly stepped out of her house. The cool air wrapped around her as she moved carefully, making sure no one saw her. Her heart pounded in her chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. When she reached the scattered slippers of Anita's children, her hands trembled as she uncorked the bottle. Taking a deep breath, she began pouring the green liquid over the slippers, watching as it seeped into the fabric, glistening faintly under the moonlight. As she did this, she whispered the incantations the native doctor had taught her, her voice low, yet firm. The words felt strange on her tongue, but powerful, as though they carried the weight of something beyond her control. Finished with her task, Cynthia hurried back inside, shutting the door behind her. She leaned against it, as if trying to shield herself from the gravity of what she had just done. She lay awake for the rest of the night, her mind racing. Would the children really fall ill? Would Anita realize what had been done? Would she finally get what she had longed for all these years? A child of her own? The next morning, Anita woke up early as usual. Sunlight filtered through the curtains as she went about her routine, waking her children, preparing breakfast, and getting them ready for the day. Her children, full of energy, were their usual playful selves, laughing and chatting as they ate. There was no sign that anything unusual had happened the night before. As the days turned into weeks, Anita's household remained lively, filled with the sounds of her children playing and running around. Nothing seemed amiss. Cynthia, who had been anxiously watching from her window, grew more and more confused with each passing day. She had expected something, anything, to happen to Anita and her children after using the charm. But they were as healthy and noisy as ever. Her frustration began to build. The same laughter that once made her jealous now filled her with a deep sense of failure. Every morning, as the children ran past her window, she would look out, hoping to see some sign that the native doctor's charm had worked. But each day was the same. Anita's children were fine, and Anita herself seemed happier than ever. Despite her growing doubts, Cynthia remained determined to follow the native doctor's instructions. Each night, she continued pouring the contents of the green bottle onto the children's slippers, convinced that if she persisted, the charm would eventually work. But as the days stretched into 2 weeks, her hope began to dwindle, leaving her with an emptiness that echoed within her. A strange smell. One afternoon, as Anita's children were getting ready to play outside, they began to complain about a strange smell coming from their slippers. "Mama, our slippers smell weird," one of the children said, wrinkling his nose. "We tried washing them, but the smell won't go away." Anita frowned, puzzled. She hadn't noticed anything unusual before, but the concerned looks on her children's faces made her take a closer inspection. She picked up one of the slippers and took a deep sniff. Immediately she recoiled at the strange, pungent odor that rose from it. It was unlike anything she had ever encountered, a mix of something sour, bitter, and unnatural. "What in the world?" Anita murmured, suspicion creeping into her mind. She glanced at her children, who were staring at her, waiting for an answer. "I'll wash them again," she said firmly, determined to get to the bottom of this. However, after several unsuccessful attempts to clean the slippers, the strange smell remained. No matter how much she scrubbed, it wouldn't fade. A troubling thought crossed Anita's mind. Could Cynthia be behind this? Catching Cynthia in the act. That night, Anita devised a plan. She would stay up late and keep an eye on Cynthia's house, watching to see if her neighbor would come out and do something to the slippers again. As darkness fell, she positioned herself at a spot where she had a clear view of the compound. She knew that whatever Cynthia was doing, it needed to be stopped. The night was quiet, but tension filled the air as Anita remained alert, bracing herself for what she might discover. Sure enough, in the dead of night, Cynthia slipped out of her house, holding a small green bottle in her hand. Moving carefully, she walked toward the spot where Anita's children had left their slippers. Anita's heart pounded as she watched her neighbor kneel and unscrew the cap of the bottle, preparing to pour its contents over the shoes once again. At that moment, Anita knew she had to act. She quickly turned on the flashlight on her phone and pointed it straight at Cynthia. A bright beam of light illuminated the scene, momentarily blinding Cynthia, who jumped back in shock, nearly dropping the bottle from her hands. "What are you doing, Cynthia?" Anita shouted, stepping forward. "What is this? What have you been doing to my children's slippers?" Cynthia froze, her eyes wide with fear. She stammered, unable to find an excuse. Anita stormed over, grabbing her by the wrist and yanking her away from the slippers. "You are a witch, Cynthia," Anita screamed, waking up the entire compound. "You have been trying to harm my family because you're jealous. You can't stand that I have children, and you don't, so you've been trying to curse them." By now, the neighbors had gathered, drawn by the commotion. The crowd murmured in agreement, their judgment clear. Cynthia stood there, trapped in a whirlwind of accusations and disbelief. This wasn't how she had imagined things would go. She had wanted a child so badly, but now everything had spiraled out of control. The aftermath. The incident changed everything. Cynthia was now an outcast in the community. The once friendly neighbors who used to greet her with warm smiles now whispered behind her back and avoided her. Anita, shaken but relieved that she had caught Cynthia in the act, tightened her guard around her children. She made sure they never left their slippers outside again. Cynthia, overcome with shame and regret, retreated into herself. She had spent years allowing jealousy and bitterness to consume her, and now she had lost not only her friendship with Anita, but also the respect of everyone around her. Days turned into weeks, and then into months. Cynthia stopped stepping out of her home unless absolutely necessary. The vibrant laughter of Anita's children, once a source of pain, now felt like a haunting reminder of her own wrong choices. Eventually, Cynthia left the neighborhood, unable to bear the weight of her reputation. Anita, though saddened by how things had turned out, remained grateful. She had come close to losing her children, but fate had intervened just in time. From that day forward, she never forgot the lesson she had learned. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who secretly wish us harm. And as for Cynthia, no one ever heard from her again. Moral of the story: jealousy is a dangerous seed. It can grow into something destructive if not uprooted. When we focus too much on what others have, we risk losing sight of the blessings in our own lives. Hope you enjoy the story. Please support me by like and subscribe, and turn on your notification for more exciting story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.